Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Altcoin Analysis, the show where I shit on your shitcoins. So I've been seeing a lot of talk and chatter on Twitter regarding Tezos. So some people are bullish, Jeremy. Some people are bearish, me. And I thought it would be interesting if I actually went in and looked at Tezos, made a case for it, whether I actually was bearish or bullish on it, and looked at the fundamentals of it. So this is also going to be the beginning of a segment where I look at altcoins. I have a few other altcoins that I'm going to be looking at and judging whether they are good investments or not, both in the short term and the long term. And obviously, going to be looking at mainly the fundamentals of it so that you as viewers can get a read on how I look at coins, how I look at things from that fundamental level, whether I think things are worthwhile to invest in or not. So today we're going to be looking over Tezos. As mentioned before, Tezos is titled the Self-Amending Cryptographic Ledger. And it's titled that because, well, it is actually self-amending. It's one of the very few, actually I think it is the only blockchain that is truly self-amending. And so we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, we'll just go into the first slide here. So we'll talk about the history of Tezos first. It was founded by Arthur and Kathleen Brightman, who are some hosh-posh, big shot graduates at some posh university that is pretty irrelevant. But the point is that Arthur and Kathleen know what they're talking about. I have interacted with Arthur before on Twitter. He's generally quite a smart guy, and I know a few of his other investments. I know the kind of technically minded person that he is, and certainly it's very... For me, having someone like Arthur on a project is generally quite bullish. And so that's obviously one of the great points about Tezos is that it does have the backing of Arthur Brightman. They raised $230 million USD in July 2017. So that was when they had their ICO. I partook in the ICO. I bought some nominal amount of Tezos. I didn't really understand it at the time. I did think that it was something that was bullish, again, because of the ties with Brightman, but I didn't truly understand it at the time. But I did buy some Tezos in that ICO, and they raised, obviously, quite a lot of money, $250 million, which was, I think, about 10 times more than they had intended to raise. I think the intended raise was $20 million, and it was uncapped, and so everyone could get in, and everyone did get in, and there was quite a lot of FOMO around the end there. So the initial distribution for Tezos was scheduled for October of 2017. It was just a few months after the closing of the ICO. But unfortunately, what ended up happening is there were a lot of legal issues and lawsuits and a whole bunch of other things that, while very interesting, do not really add much to the fundamental view of Tezos now. So I will skip on that. I may actually end up making a video later on this thing on the fundamentals of what ended up happening with the whole lawsuit and all of that drama. But I think that's saved for a different video. But needless to say, tokens were scheduled for October, but that didn't happen. And they were finally distributed in June of 2018, almost a year later after the closing of the ICO. And that was beta net. So everyone got their tokens, and there was no promise and no guarantee that the tokens were going to be that the tokens would persist onto the mainnet, but as it turns out, they did persist onto the mainnet, and it was just a quick swapping of the name essentially in September of 2018, where they said, we are no longer in beta net, we are now in mainnet, everything works, everything is just fine. And over here, I included a little bit of a chart, or a little chart that shows some of the biggest ICOs. Some of the largest ICOs are not on this list. So there's Polkadot, there's Dfinity, there's a few others. There's the Telegram network. So there's a few other ICOs that aren't here. But really, we can see Tezos getting that $250 million, and then right along with Filecoin and Bancor. And over here is EOS. So EOS raised $4 billion. So congratulations, EOS, I suppose. I guess that's what this chart shows. I will be making an EOS video pretty soon, actually. So look forward to that one. So here's the price chart for Tezos. Back to Tezos now. Here's the price chart. The orange is in Bitcoin. The green is in USD. I took out... So there was some initial history for Tezos where they were trading with IOU tokens. So I believe this was on HitBTC. They were trading IOUs, which weren't actual Tezos tokens. This was just paper trades for the tokens that were yet to be distributed. So I took out that data, and we're really only looking at the post-distro information here. And Tezos has been doing okay. It's been trading anywhere from around $1 to $2, and then over here we had this massive dip that coincided along with the Bitcoin dip. Actually, looks quite similar to the Bitcoin dip that we had that took us from $6,000 to around $3,000 around the beginning of the year. And so yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. I would say generally, just looking at this price chart, it doesn't look too particularly inspiring. I know technical traders are generally looking for some kind of technical reason to get in. I just kind of look at this chart and it looks like it's kind of bleeding all over the dance floor. So that's just my personal opinion. Obviously, I'm not a technical trader, so your opinion and your mileage may vary. But that is the Tezos chart. So trading right now around $1. So around about, I'm not sure what the ICO price was in USD. I think it was anywhere from 50 cents to $1. So it's round about there. Moving forward, so a few of the features of Tezos. So it is self-amending. What does that mean? Self-amending basically means that all of the holders of the Tezos tokens can upgrade the Tezos protocol on-chain without having to do anything off-chain, without having to do any kind of forks, which exist now, without having to do some kind of weird altcoin, which we have seen has happened. Arthur Brightman actually made a statement before we had this huge bull run with Ethereum and all of that he essentially predicted thousands and thousands of altcoins would be created just to try and extend the capabilities of platforms, of smart contract platforms, and that ended up happening. So he was right. So Prophet Arthur points to him. But the interesting thing for Tezos is that it is self-amending, which means that you don't need to make an altcoin on Tezos, although you can. But because it's self-amending means that you can upgrade it forever. It can upgrade itself just based on whatever the community wants. It's proof of stake, so proof of stake obviously a little bit more or a lot more efficient, obviously, than proof of work. But it does always have that problem of proof of stake, rich get richer, which does also exist in proof of work, but it's less so with proof of stake. There's formally verified smart contracts. So this is the feature that I personally am really in love with, and one of the reasons why I held Tezos for as long as I did. I have now sold my Tezos position, but we'll see at the end of this video if I may have changed my mind. But formally verified smart contracts. So what does that mean? Not many people understand what formal verification is. So I will give a brief gestalt on that. So formal verification, you can think of it as a mathematical proof that something is true. So if I have a program built on a computer and it's not formally verified, I can have bugs and I can have glitches and sometimes it won't work. If instead I code that program with formal verification in mind and I make it formally verified, then I know mathematically what all of the end results and the end states are going to be of that program, so I can verify whether my program is going to run without glitches or not. And in the case of formal verification, it's simply not going to work if you're going to have a program with bugs and glitches. And so the very nice thing about formal verification is that it ensures a lot of security for your smart contracts. It ensures a lot of security for the code. And it basically just makes the whole thing a lot easier for institutions to get in, for people who are worried about their money, who are planning to put in, say, millions of dollars in a smart contract. You don't want some weird glitch or some weird bug like what happened with the DAO hack happening with your smart contract. That cannot happen with a formally verified smart contract, which is great. You can already see the value there. Parity hack is another great example. Parity wallets got hacked or they weren't hacked, but there was a suicide function called on them, deleted all of the libraries. I believe somewhere around $300 million was lost. So you can consider that $300 million as being quite the amount of value that having formal verification brings to your platform. So it's great. I personally, huge fan of formal verification, and I want to see more projects do this. So he uses Michelson, which is, you can consider it the solidity of Tezos. So you code in Michelson. I'm not sure what Michelson is based off of. I'm not a coder myself, but there you have it. And finally, this isn't really so much a feature as much as it is a business. On the business side, they provide grants to developers to build on Tezos. And you'll see why this is important in the next slide. So some positives about Tezos. So elevated returns, which I did a little bit of research on these guys. They put in about $18 million last year into this coin. I think it was called Aspen coin. So these guys are well funded. They know what they're doing. And Securitize, obviously, we know who Securitize is. They plan to tokenize $1 billion of USD, $1 billion USD value of real estate on Tezos, which is awesome. One of the things that we're always looking for as investors is this kind of movement, this kind of adoption, this kind of integration with existing legacy systems. And so it's really, really interesting to me that they're basically, that Tezos, even though it's only existed for a short amount of time, they're already doing an amazing deal. In my opinion, this is one of the best deals in crypto that really goes unsung. Not many people talk about this. So I'm going to talk about it. I think it's really important. I think it's really useful. I think the tokenization of assets and real estate is going to be one of the killer apps of blockchain. And really what we're waiting for is for the right team and the right project to come along and do so. And for Tezos, it makes a lot of sense because Tezos, again, is formally verified. So you have all of that security. And because you have that security, you can now bring your real estate, which is very, very valuable, onto a secure platform where you are sure that you're not going to have any kind of problems, any kind of issues, any kind of glitches or bugs. So that is really great. I think it's a great positive and a development that I did not know about. I wasn't aware of this until I actually started digging into Tezos. So great. One of the best things. They've given out nearly $40 million USD in grants since July of 2018. So it's been about a year and they've given out 40 million USD. That is a lot of money, my friends. And it's a lot of money all going towards development of Tezos, development of ecosystem, infrastructure, community projects, building things on it, creating tooling, core libraries. All of this is super, super, super important for Tezos and for any project, really. And the fact that Tezos has given out so much in just 1 year really shows how aggressive they are pursuing this. It's not just, oh, we're just going to give a few $1 million here. We're giving out $40 million in a year, my dude. So imagine what they're going to do next year and so on. So they have a very, very aggressive strategy of investing heavily into teams that are willing to develop for them, which I think is amazing, incredible. I have not looked into EOS, but I'd be very curious to see what the numbers are with EOS compared to Tezos in terms of their grants. So another thing, which is a great positive for Tezos that I did not know about until I started researching, is that there's compilers like Solidity, which allows Ethereum devs to work on Tezos while only having to code in a language that is very, very similar to Solidity, so they don't have to go and learn Michelson. One of the drawbacks that I always talked about when I talked about Tezos was the fact that developers would have to learn Michelson, which was a different language than Solidity. Solidity, in my mind, has become the de facto standard, and so if you're not bridging the gap over to these developers, they're never going to come. And we can see here that they have bridged that gap. We have Solidity now, so you can build on Tezos with a JavaScript / Solidity-like environment, which is great. They're innovating block explorers with several initiatives, and block explorers might not sound particularly interesting, but I think it is something that, again, I made a video on this recently talking about on-chain data, and I see here that Tezos is doing something very similar to what I was discussing in terms of looking at on-chain data, looking at displaying things in a graphic manner, using GUIs, creating dynamic sorting, filtering, sortition, all of these interesting things that just don't exist on other blockchains. Tezos is doing it. So while you may think that a block explorer is not particularly interesting, that's only because block explorers are so primitive. So we have Aeronax, Tezblock, TZScan. We have a lot of others. I think there's 2 or 3 other block explorers that are all tackling different problems and different sides of it. So some are more suited for just standard block explorers, like you would expect from a Bitcoin block explorer. Other ones are more suited towards developers. Other ones are suited more towards communities, which is awesome. So I think this is one of those things that is really going to help development along for Tezos, and I'm quite bullish on that. And then the final positive, they do have a lot of money, guys. They have a massive war chest with 650 million USD. The Bitcoin that they've held, they now, I believe 61% of the Tezos holdings of the 650 million is in Bitcoin. And obviously when the ICO happened, Bitcoin was trading at, I think it was $2,000-$3,000. And so now, obviously, with Bitcoin trading at 12,000 or 11,000, things are looking pretty damn good for them. holding that 60% in Bitcoin. Aside from that, they have fiat reserves, they have bonds, they have other things in order to, their stability funds is basically what they call it, in order to just to be a little bit more diversified and make sure that Bitcoin doesn't go to zero and they get wrecked, which is awesome. But imagine it, $650 million. That goes back to seeing how and why they've put and why they've decided to put $40 million of USD in grants in just a single year. Well, they have so much money that they can do that. They could do that for the next 12 to 15 years, essentially, which is awesome. Negatives. So we'll talk a little bit about the negatives here. It is currently an $800 million market cap. So despite all of those great things that I said before, unfortunately, it is $800 million market cap, which is very, very high. Obviously, we as investors are looking for the huge returns. We want the big returns. And so investing in something with $800 million market cap it's questionable at best. It's always difficult. And the second sad data point here is out of the top 20 coins on CoinMarketCap, Tezos is one of the least traded by volume. So it doesn't have very good volume at all, even though it's on Coinbase Pro, which is sad. And so you can look at this as you can look at this as a positive and a negative, to be honest. On one side, because there's not much volume, you see that there's not much interest. On the other side, because there's not much interest, that means if you are bullish on this asset, there could potentially be a front run possibility here where perhaps people aren't interested because the hype hasn't arrived yet. So you can front run all of that hype. So, but I generally look at it as from an Occam's razor perspective. I think the fact that there's little volume is certainly more of a negative than a positive. It would be better if Tezos had more volume. I don't know if they hire market makers, so maybe that has something to do with it. So the third thing, there's a lot of historical baggage with the lawsuits and the negative community perspective. So most people that I talk to, whenever I talk to them about Tezos, they go, "Oh, that coin that took a year to deliver, and when they released their tokens, everyone got 0.75x USD returns, and they had all of these lawsuits, and it doesn't do anything, and it has a massive market cap." That's generally what people think of when I talk to them about Tezos. So the community perspective is absolutely negative, and I think certainly it's going to be difficult to change that perspective into one that is positive. And I hope that this is one of the videos that does it, because I am after having done my research in Tezos, I am a little bit more positive than I used to be. But we're still on the negatives here. Final negative, inflation rate of 5%, around 5%. That fluctuates depending on how many people are staking it at the time. But I think the inflation rate is a little too high for me personally, especially at an $800 million market cap. It's going to be a lot more money than that if you are hoping that it increases in price. And so, again, it's $40 million every year extra being flooding the markets and being sold potentially. So finally, we'll get to the verdict here. So after having looked at all the positives and the negatives, the verdict that I have for Tezos is, in fact, a small buy. It is a buy, but it is a small buy. So Tezos has a lot of money for funding development, $650 million. They spent $40 million in the last year. They're obviously going to continue doing that. They're making the right moves with legacy markets, doing the partnerships that they have had with Elevated Ventures, I believe they were called. And obviously, if STO tokenization of real estate succeeds, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be one of those things where people have been talking about this for a long, long time. People have been talking about tokenizing assets, specifically real estate, houses, villas, properties, land, whatever. And no one has really managed to do this so far. We've had a few projects that talk a big game about it, but no one is really doing it. And with Tezos, it's almost the inversion, where they were never really intending to be an STO platform, but people looked at Tezos and they decided this is the one. And now all of this STO stuff is happening. And so looking at Tezos' website and all of their materials, they're actually reacting to what the community wants. If the community is doing STOs, Tezos says, well, okay, let's be an STO platform. It's a great use case. Why not? Let's do it. So that's great. So it's the other way around for Tezos, which is nice. So it's almost as if the use case came first and then the shill happened after that. On the negative side, yearly inflation curve is rough. Again, $40 million at current prices being potentially sold every year. The high current market cap precludes massive gains, so it prevents massive gains. It's hard because everyone is always looking for that 5x, that 10x, that 100x. I mean, Tezos is not going to 100x. It could potentially 10x. It could potentially 10x, but it definitely, if it 10x's, it will almost certainly require a bull run, an altcoin bull run. And then if you have an altcoin bull run, every alt is going 10x or more. So it's difficult from that perspective to really warrant and justify a large buy. And then generally on a macro level, alts are still, in fact, depressed. Alts are still bearish. There is no alt season and nothing in sight, really, that is going to lead me to believe that there's going to be any new individuals and newcomers that are going to be coming for Tezos. So I am bullish on Tezos. I do think, after having looked at all of the information, that it is actually one of the more bullish projects, especially with the STOs, especially with all of the money they have and all of the development that is happening. I've spoken to a lot of Tezos fans, and they are real community members, which is great. So you always want some bag holders. And so I do think it is a buy, but again, it's a small buy for all of the reasons I stated before. So that was it. That was my review on Tezos. I think it's a pretty good coin. I love the formal verification of their smart contracts, and I think there's definitely going to be a lot of news that you're going to be hearing from Tezos in the future, especially considering all of the things that they have executed upon in the past already. So leave a like if you like this video. I will be doing more of these in the future, so if you liked it, let me know. Leave a comment. Tell me what coins you guys are interested in me doing a fundamental analysis of. Obviously, that's one of my greatest skills, so if I can do videos like this and help people out and really get to the value of things, the better. So again, leave a like if you like the videos, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you guys next time.